Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Pursuant to MGL 7C 30A 20F, after notifying the chair of a public body, any person may make a video, audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. Meeting is being recorded by the Berkshire CTSB in the town of Great Barrington. And there is another one on there, Angela. It's a note taker, so I think that is also a recording. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed. Other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. Select board's announcements and statements. Start with Phil.
Nothing.
Ben. Darko.
Excuse me now.
Eric.
I'm all set. Thank you.
I will just say that under new business 6E, the vote to close citizens petition will not be done tonight because it's already been done as oversight on my part. Citizens petition closed this Friday, February 13th at the close of business at Town Hall. We have approval of minutes, January 26th. Oh, it's town manager's report. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
You go first.
Oh, all right. Thank you. So my report for February 9th, 2026. As a result of regional regulatory change approved at the federal level, the town's current aggregation rate through Colonial Power Group will increase by a 0.0125 per kilowatt hour effective with March 26 meter reads. This adjusts the rate from 13 cents per kilowatt to up to 15 cents per kilowatt hour and will remain in effect through the end of the current contract term in November of 28. This change is tied to a new market structure implemented by ISO New England, which significantly increased ancillary service costs between original projections. These costs are being passed through to all electricity suppliers across Massachusetts, including National Grid, meaning ratepayers will be impacted regardless of their supplier. For the average household using about 600 kilowatt hours per month, the increase equates to approximately $7.15 extra per month. Despite this adjustment, the town's aggregation rate remains competitive with current basic rate service rates, and the program continues to provide long-term value since its launch in 2017. Residents seeking additional information about the rate adjustment program details or their options are encouraged to visit the supplier's website at colonialpowergroup.com. Just a quick reminder that 26 dog licenses are now available. All dogs 6 months of age or older are required to be licensed each year. Licenses can be renewed online, by mail, or in person at Town Hall, and proof of current rabies vaccination is required at the time of renewal. The deadline to renew is March 31st, 2026. Residents are encouraged to renew early to avoid late fees or penalties. And additional information is available on the town's website through the town clerk's office. The town has received confirmation from Mass DEP that labor costs associated with the installation of eligible water filtration systems are allowable and eligible for reimbursement under the Housatonic Water Reimbursement Program. This clarification provides important guidance as the town continues to administer the reimbursement process and ensures that eligible expenses are treated consistently and in accordance with DEP requirements. Over the past 10 weeks since we increased our outreach, the town has distributed $72,017.93 in reimbursements, reflecting an accelerated pace of processing and increased participation by eligible households. As of February 19th, reimbursements totaling for FY26 was $84,832.06 supporting 115 households under this program. Residents with questions about eligibility, required documentation, or the reimbursement process are encouraged to visit the town's website for the most up-to-date information or contact the town manager's office directly for assistance. To support continuing discussions regarding residential tax exemptions, staff has developed public materials explaining how residential tax exemption works, including the January 26 presentation slides and background information, which are available now on the town's website within the assessors page. In addition, I have reached out to and distributed a peer input survey to all 21 Massachusetts communities that currently have a residential tax exemption in place, including those with split tax rates. The goal of this outreach is to understand why those communities adopted the exemption, how it has worked in practice, what challenges they have encountered, and what lessons they will share with the community considering it today. Responses received will be analyzed and then shared with the select board and public at the next regularly scheduled meeting on this topic. Lastly, the development of the FY27 budget is proceeding in accordance with the adopted budget action calendar. On Tuesday, February 3rd, I presented a public overview of the 26 budget, as well as an FY27 financial forecast to provide context and set the stage for upcoming budget discussions. This presentation was intended to support transparency and early understanding ahead of the publication of the 27 budget books, which will be made available online by this Friday, February 13th. All related materials, including presentation slides, are available on the town manager's webpage under the FY27 budget. Thank you.
Thanks. Now, approval of minutes, the January 26, 2026 meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the January 2026 minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I was here then.
I'm sorry?
I was not here then.
Okay, so 4 yes votes. Licenses and permits. An application for a temporary entertainment license by Gwendolyn Van Sant, W.B. Du Bois Legacy Committee Chair, to utilize town property for W.E. Du Bois Day and Legacy Festival events, Monday, February 23rd, 2026, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Gwen, do you just want to give a quick overview to get a little free publicity?
Before she does, I just want to disclose that I am a member of the W.E.B. Du Bois Legacy Committee.
Thanks, Greg.
I do that just in here.
Better come up just because of the owl, make sure they. We'll learn.
Is this up?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Hi, everyone. So we have the Du Bois Festival, all coming into formation. We actually are starting February 21st with Dr. W. Du Bois's great grandson, Jeff Peck. He'll be putting on a play at Monument Mountain. It's called Du Bois, an American Hero. Yes, and it's 5 to 7:30. So that'll be this Saturday. And then on Sunday, Macedonia Baptist Church has a service at 11 a.m. and that'll have kind of a celebration and service around Dr. Du Bois's work with some African-American dancers coming in from Boston. And then on Du Bois Day, the town holiday, right, we have a two-part event. So at 12 o'clock at the Mason Library, we'll have a community read of the 100th anniversary of the Criteria of Negro Art. And with that, we have folks from Camp Atwater, where Du Bois sent his daughter, and many other folks of African-American heritage attended that camp. They'll be coming out along with the Urban League from Western Mass, and we'll do the reading. We also have that same African drumming group doing some African drumming, so the library won't be very quiet on Monday at noontime. And we're hoping that the schools will send students to participate. We're excited that Du Bois Day is actually during the school calendar because usually it's break. And so that'll happen 12 to 2. And then we'll mosey on down to, the Indigo Room at the Mahaley, and that's where we have a keynote, and that's Dr. Cheryl Giltz from Harvard, and she's a Du Bois Scholar at the Hutchins Institute. And she'll be speaking, and we'll have our beloved Wanda Houston and also Dr. Mary Mel Morgan, who's been with us for decades around Du Bois work, doing a rendition of the sorrow songs together. So that'll be 3 to 5. And then over at the Bridge Solidarity House, we'll have a reception, and Dre's Global Kitchen will be cooking Trinidadian food, and everybody's invited to come join and eat and close out the Du Bois Day with birthday cake.
Thank
Nice,
you.
very nice.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve a temporary entertainment license by Gwyneth Van Sant for WB Du Bois Legacy Committee to utilize town property and on Monday, February 23rd, 2026, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thanks, Gwen. New business. It's a discussion with Bridge Director Gwendolyn Van Sant and Interim Police Chief Adam Carlotto on updates to the trust policy. Liz, do you just want to explain the procedure we're going to use?
Yes, so tonight is gonna be just what the agenda says, is the discussion with Bridge and Interim Chief Carlotto on the updates for the policy. And I believe that after tonight's discussion about some of the updates, we will be launching a town webpage for the policy itself and providing a comment, online comment form for people to review, take some time and submit comments. And then we will bring back those comments to a future public meeting, a regularly scheduled meeting, which I believe there's space on the 2nd of March. So we will have a month basically, or about 3 weeks or so, to collect public comment on the new draft that Gwen has worked on with the chief.
Gwen, do you want to guide us through the suggested changes?
How do you, we sent that PowerPoint, I guess there's a public link. It'll work, you can take it home with you. So should I just talk it through?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Well, I'll just actually use it summary and then can get into some details. We have some folks here that have collaborated on it and have been speaking to you all throughout the last several months. And then there's also some people on Zoom. But basically, I think Chief Carlotto is there.
Yes, I promoted it. He's on.
So basically, we've met a few times with Chief Carlotto, including at Martin Luther King Day, to do a 2.0 addendum. So this is an addendum to, thank you, an advisory, the advisory policy that we passed in 2017. So I'm just going to read the purpose is, this is an implementation and governance addendum to the town's 2017 trust policy. It's not meant to replace or amend or expand the original policy. It's just providing us guidance, a little bit more procedure, so we can work towards being in more alignment and deeper collaboration with the police department and the town. We want to really clarify roles and expectations and really build trust. It's called the trust policy, right? So build mutual trust. The 2.0, Eric, I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, or do you want me to go for it?
No, I mean, I think you
got it?
covered. I'll come and I'll be near you.
Okay, I think Eric has been doing work to bring in the newer select board. I think Steve, you were the only one that was here before, so
Yeah.
we tried to make sure that everybody's familiar with the trust policy as it was in the past. So that was really about, it was modeled after sanctuary cities and but making it really relevant to our town, right? So that it was the right size for Great Barrington, right size for the way our relationships and communities work. And there were just some issues that needed more clarity. I learned from Chief Carlotto that the kind of community request not to interact with ICE limited them in some ways. So right now, we're trying to characterize what that communication looks like, right? So that's one of the things that we want to do. Our trust policy also, again, is motivated by immigration issues, but we are thinking about all vulnerable populations or people in the protected class categories. And what else do I want to say? We really have worked hard as a committee and community members to listen to people, diverse voices, diverse communities, but also align ourselves with the town's values and what you've been doing in your strategic priorities. And so that's kind of where we are.
I think another important 2.0 change is looking at the actual mechanism for community members to hold each other in care and kind of help promote the education and the institution of the policies. And that was something that existed in the original policy that was passed, but that never kind of got off the ground with a committee or.
Right, so that I'll go through those 5 pillars. So the first one is community policing and community relationships. And that's where we would like to be in partnership with the police department. I'm right here in the 5 pillars right here. In the police department, really do mutual training and education. One thing that we did last time after the trust policy was passed was have a citizen or resident police academy. And that's a way in which people in the community can learn about the police department and the way it operates. And the police department can begin to develop trust and relationship in diverse communities. It was really successful the last time, actually. It was Sergeant Carlotto at the time that co-taught it with Sergeant Ulrich, but I think it would be really great to have that be a proactive policy, not just reacting to when we're in crisis like we are now. And then there are other educational law enforcement programs like procedural justice that I've done with the Pittsfield Police Department, where actually residents and interested parties can be trained right alongside police. So there's some kind of real understanding of what the police department is being asked to do in our communities, so that when we're advocating and we're not agreeing, when there's conflict, we have better mutual understanding. The next piece Erica was speaking to are the trust policy partnerships. We had laid the groundwork, and it's mentioned in trust policy 1.0, that we would have a trust policy partnership. What we've done in the last few years, off and on, is research human rights commissions and those different models. But in Great Barrington, it didn't feel like that was going to add any trust or safety for people, because we're a small community. People have to stand up and say, hi, I didn't do it, but I'm Gwendolyn that lives on State Road, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't, if people are feeling vulnerable in any way, it doesn't really lead to that kind of sense of safety. So we fizzled out on that, but we wanted to get back to it. So what Erica's speaking to is this group did some research, and we found in Northampton, there's a model called the Division of Community Care. And they have a group of people that are part of the city. So again, we have to modify it for a town, but we're interested in having a group of community residents that are responding in ways that may not require the force of a police officer, the uniform, or the stuff that they come adorned with, trying to go help somebody in crisis and trauma. So that there's an idea of having a community care team that is community centric. And then another leg that would be a nonprofit network. So folks that already work with vulnerable populations, have the subject matter expertise, are trusted in community, can also be in collaboration with the police department. The way that when Chief Carlotto and I were speaking, it's sort of a renewal of partnerships that the police departments already had with nonprofits, and so incorporating some of the new ways, just kind of a refresh on that. But we've been talking to several nonprofits through different coalitions, and there's a lot of interest in the Basic Coalition and some other groups to be in this trust policy partnership. And so far, I got a note from Chief Carlotto that everything that I'm saying sounds good. It's what we've talked about. And the third one, this is kind of what's prompted us to have this conversation now, is the ICE notification. So right now, basically, I understand it that it's a courtesy call, if you want to call it that, but ICE will say that they're coming into Great Barrington at the wee hours of the morning, so the police department's notified, and because of the trust policy they've said, okay, thank you, and hung up the phone. What Chief Carlotto stated when we met is that he'd rather be able to follow up and ask, was there an apprehension? Where did they go, so that they can respond to community. Oftentimes follow up with a case that might also be open already with them, with the person that was being apprehended. I want to be transparent that what the community wants is a little more than that, right? So we've been going back and forth. What we would like is for the ICE to be identified when they come into town, like, ID them, make sure we understand the vehicles. But we've been in a conversation, I would say, about understanding that we cannot interrupt criminal proceedings, and that we don't want to have less communication from ICE than we already have, right? So we're sort of in this negotiation period about what it is that how we can make the community as safe as possible. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did I get that right? So that's one of the ones we're working on, and one of the ones that seems the most important. So when they were in Great Barrington downtown, no one seemed to know what to do. So in this part, we still want to dig into procedure a little bit more, but we're at least clear on as much identification as possible. Question for community is still, how do we feel safe when ICE comes? That's still an open question. What we do feel like we can act upon right away is getting an understanding of what happened to the individuals that we were coming to pick up. And then the next one, strategic plan and budget alignment. This one's again about asking the select board and the town and the police department to create resources and allocation of time and staffing to this work. The one thing I know for doing equity work for all this time is that if you have a plan with no budget, it's not a plan. And so asking you all to make sure that this is a budget priority, what the police department needs to make it safer. We were talking about outdated equipment. We're talking about lack of adequate language translation in the moment. We're talking about lack of access to nonprofit agencies off hours, like when things happen right at night and on weekends. So thinking about how to resource the police department to be the most effective so that people can feel the most safe. And there are ideas about what that looks like right now, but in the Trust Policy 2.0, we just want to make sure that it's a priority. And then the fifth one is one that is, as we've been doing this research, we understand, I'm trying to remember and I've forgotten, but there's a policy, I think because I don't like it, it involves the term alien something, but it's that when an immigrant is in criminal proceedings, that there's an immediate reporting to the government, right? And with that, it limits again, like what powers our local police department have, right? So, but the idea is that people don't know and don't understand. So there's something just about civics and civil education, and then there's also what can we do as a community to advocate for more equitable procedures around this work. So being really transparent about data in the police department, what gets shared in court proceedings, that's all really important work. So those are the 5 pillars. What we're hoping to do with the 2.0 is lay groundwork and structure for this work to go on. Right? So we can't solve this all right now, and there's, as issues shift in society and in our community, we want to be able to have mechanisms so that we can have conversations at work and be resourced to do the work. Right? So it's like, how are we going to do the work? How are we going to be in relationship? How are we going to do that in the most informed way possible? So that's what I really wanted you all to understand about what we've gotten to with the 2.0. This is not a document that's wordsmith. So we want you to know this is about principles. This is not like the policy forward language that we want to end with. It's about what are we trying to get across and where are we trying to get to, and what mechanisms can be in place for the town. But none of us are here, and there's a whole other group of people here that the town has made some commitments. One thing that I always forget that I've reminded myself is about mutual aid. Rich does mutual aid around food and resources, so that is an interesting concept, but you all use it around the other police departments coming to support when issues come up, right? That's it. And I think it was a really good question that you asked of like, how are those departments in alignment with the values of Great Barrington? And right now there isn't a real mechanism for that. I understand it's a county-wide agreement, but what we've gotten to so far with Chief Carlotto is that he will work with the media towns, right, to make sure that there is a clear agreement and alignment around values. So the folks that are more likely to show up in Great Barrington to support our police department, Chief Carlotta will talk to those chiefs and those departments to make sure there's more alignment. Is there, I don't know, I'm looking to my colleagues.
I mean, I feel like that's the bulk of it. The important part is that it's not replacing the original one. It's not even revising it. It's an addendum to it to show how we move it forward and make it kind of a living document, a living process.
So just as a reminder, what Liz says, we're gonna take comments for the next 3 weeks. It'll be on the agenda, the first meeting in March. I'll be happy to take brief questions or comments, either online or in person now. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah. That PowerPoint is something that's been traveling around the county and the town, so people have access to that link in the agenda, so people can look at it and go through it, but I just gave you this one.
I just wanted to circle back to, you were discussing like the trust policy partnerships and maybe having different folks show up when there's a crisis of some sort. I guess, can you speak to that a little more? What category is it, like what wellness checks or when you say crisis,
The
I guess?
model that we've gotten to in, so we worked with some people in the Pittsfield Public Health Department that's done deeper research, and what we understand is that there's a division of community care in the city of Northampton. I mean, they have a building, et cetera, et cetera. They send people out. Those people have name tags, and they actually have a 911 button on the back of there. So if it's more of a crisis than community members, lay people can handle them, the police department's ready, right? But that there's a way in which there could be community care, you know, kind of taking on some of the responsibility that people think don't necessarily belong with the police, right? The police are trained to do a certain job in a certain way, and that's not always what people need in trauma and crisis, right? So that it would be meant to be in partnership with the police and very good communication with the police, but a separate entity to help work. There's conversation in our group so far about what that might look like as an advisory group. There is a desire to make sure it's sort of not under the control, quote unquote, of the town, because then it seems like it has less agency and ability to build trust, right? But that's a conversation to continue, right? And Northampton is under the public health department. And I think we have a person that's part-time in our public health department, is that right?
No,
She's
it's just a
full-time?
single.
Yeah, single person. So it's a lot. We definitely would like to do it in partnership, but just, we have to again think about for Great Barrington, what is a health model? I think we have like 4 health coalitions in our town, or like that live through sort of our town. So I think that there's ways in which we could figure out what that looks like. But it's really giving more agency to the community to take care of community and in partnership with the police department. And then the second leg of that is the trust policy partnership, which again, I'm saying names, but these aren't people that are like necessarily committed, but people, places like Railroad Street or People's Pantry or Elizabeth Freeman or Construct, like some of the legacy nonprofits, but then other ones like Bridges recent being 5 years. We have a culturally specific victim service grant, right, where we have funding to show up for people that, you know, speak different languages, that are, you know, diverse identities. And so making sure the police department knows that those resources are there and how to reach us and what our hours are and like how we can collaborate and advise on responses. So that's the idea. So again, it's like there's a lot of work to be done with the way this 2.0 framework is set up, but it gives advice to the town about what we think is needed to make this be more functional in times of crisis for different community groups, and how we can work together, like in mutual partnership and trust.
Anyone else in the subject?
You said you want to ID when ICE is in town and with the citizens of Great Barrington. What does that kind of look like? The thing I can think of most, and I wasn't there for the first time there, but it got pretty ugly. Some people getting in the way. What's going to stop that from happening is, you know, if ICE is here, everybody's hairs are going right up on the back of the neck, and it's going to get. No, I don't think we're going to have an organized chaos. I think it's just gonna be chaos, and people are gonna get out of hand, so I don't, how are we going to?
So those are
Keep
some of the
that.
discussions that, you know, people that know me, I'm just being transparent, is like, we cannot get everything that all of us would like in this really kind of like crappy scenario that we're in right now. So it's just like, how do we get closer to what we'd like, right? So we really understand that ICE doesn't have to call, and they can just show up. The federal government can do what they want. We've been educated that way by Chief Carlotta, right? So the minute they sense obstruction or whatever, they're just gonna show up and we won't have any idea, right? This time, when CHP calls Bridge and says, all of our patients are canceling because they think ICE is in town, like, we have networks we can call. Some of us can call the police and get, you know, an answer. I called the police and said, is it true? And they're like, no, we didn't get a call. So we were able to talk to CHP, and it just kind of, you know, brings the collective nervous system down, right? So if we disrupt that too much, there's a safety net that's disrupted. It's not ideal. We'd like it if our police department would say, hey, like, we want to know who your ICE agents are. We want to have them ID'd. We're going to show up on scene. But I don't know how practical all that is now from what the conversations that we're having, right? It's not ideal. It's not like what Gwendolyn wants. It's not anything like that. It's just where we are in sort of building trust and safety the best we can, with thinking about the people we're trying to protect with this policy at the center, not everybody else's ego or et cetera, right? We're trying to protect vulnerable people for feeling even more vulnerable and taking away their safety net. And so what that looks like is us compromising, working, and building structures that maybe in 5 to 10 years will be in a completely different place. Hopefully it will be in a very different place. But right now, this is where we are. And I feel like, as people have heard me say over the last month, this is like an iterative step to more trust and safety. I feel like there's big shifts in here, even though it's an advisory, to have the police department say, you know, I'm happy to have this extra team and these extra thought partners and people thinking about care in our community, and having that be like a clear bridge and an open window feels like a good step forward. Having Chief Barrington come to the MLK with State Rep Lee Davis and have a frank conversation, like plain closed in community, went really far, especially for some of our young queer people that were in that space that day. I think, you know, we're just in a process together, and I believe that this 2.0 gives us more structure and form, which is something that the police department said they needed, and also gives us mechanisms to continue building together. I think that's that strategy at the moment.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Dr. was asking a little bit. So we have a mechanism in place where if they get the call, GBPD gets the call from ICE, organizations can call in to check. But Chief Carlotta, is there any outward, does that information come out at all?
Yeah, so no, I get, this is probably the biggest question we get most recently, again, is, you know, what are we going to do as local law enforcement if we do get notification? The biggest thing we can provide is just verifying that they are true, you know, federal agents, so there's no discrepancies there. And the biggest thing we can do is obviously to follow up. You know, was somebody apprehended? You know, what was their name and where do they go to kind of have some answers for the folks who are left behind. You know, those are the two things. And then I think, you know, Gwendolyn said it too, as far as the false information that gets put out there often. We hate when we see that. It starts with a social media post and it's obviously not true, or we can verify that it was some other kind of law enforcement training that's been verified to not be, you know, federal civil immigration. And then we get that message out there. So that way the, you know, the bad messaging stops and people's lives don't get disrupted, as far as, again, routine medical appointments that get canceled because of something they saw on, you know, Facebook or somewhere else.
Would you alert town staff? Would you alert Liz if that was happening?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Ben?
Would you alert town staff if you got that call from ICE? Essentially, would staff be looped in?
Oh, it depending if it would warrant it. You know, if it's a public safety exception, I would certainly consider it. Again, that's more of it's a courtesy call, and they're not obligated to tell us anything. So we're sort of trying to balancing the best we can here to at least get some information without shutting those lines of communication down.
One of the questions I had too is in the existing trust policy, there's language about town resources. How do we define town resources when it comes to this policy?
When I'm thinking about resources, I'm thinking about like people power, right? And also money, you know. I think, you know, I'm gonna use the examples I've heard, but it's not limited to this. I'm not like a commercial for this, but I do think that it's very important that, when the police are interacting with folks that don't speak English, right, that they're able to communicate as best as possible. Right now, that's very limited. It's better than 10 years ago, like there are Spanish speakers on the force now, but that's not the only group of people that live here. So, that doesn't represent the only group that lives here. So, like having a system that they can translate or having people on the team that they can translate. We also talked about having a social worker. There's been a co-responder budget. I know that there are budget constraints, but I think that it's important for the community to have a co-responder or we transition to this care team and there's some people in that group and on the trust policy partnership group, but making sure that that's still a priority. And then my plug in my time at Bridge and with law enforcement locally and state and federally is that I think that a social worker on staff for the police department is really important, right? Like I'm not talking about any individual, but the things that they see and have to manage in our community, it's not pleasant, right? I mean, I don't know. And so sometimes they have to like go see a dead body or experience some kind of violence themselves and just get back to work, right? And I don't think that that's taking care of our community and or our force very well. So that's just something that I also threw in there myself of thinking about things that needed to be prioritized in the budget.
But, I mean, I think those should all be priorities.
And then the other one is I can't believe I haven't beat my drum more, but the academy. I've taken it a few times at Pittsfield and a few times at Great Barrington, I think, at least once at Barrington, but multiple times in Pittsfield. And I, just for you all to know, I spent a year teaching a good number of the Pittsfield police department. And I just think it's really important that when we get into police reform conversations, which we need to have, right? Again, I hope that might be something that our town can get behind in the long run of this advisory. But in the meantime, we need to really understand what the police department's asked to do, what we're expecting that department to do, and with what resources. And so I don't know all the resources, I'm not in the department, but I know that things that they lack, the language access, I know that, mental health is extremely important. And, sometimes that 24/7, we talked about looking at grants with certain nonprofits and looking at some of the grants that are still left open in the Office of Justice programs. And there's some that we might be able to get more of a 24/7 hotline. We might be able to do some collaborative grant making together. That's something else that we talked about. So those kinds of things.
And that's all fantastic. I'm just curious though, so when the language says we will not provide town resources to ICE outside of a remodel solution, what does
We're not
that?
gonna support, not me.
Yeah.
The town will not execute any kind of ICE activity, right? That's not our job. Just like we can't tell them what to do, we're not gonna support in any way. They wouldn't identify who a person is, they wouldn't, provide kind of patrol. I'm making things up, but right, they wouldn't put any resource of the towns behind, any ICE activity.
Chief, you want to add to that?
Yeah, just trying to clarify in regards to resources being allocated, or is that the?
Yeah, what resources would we allocate?
So essentially, there would be no resources for the town of Great Barrington being allocated to kind of federal activities. The only time would be an officer safety issue. If something went terribly sideways, obviously we'd be there. But at this time, it's not our mission. We don't get involved in any of that kind of activity. So again, they're federal, they're self-sustaining. There's nothing here in Great Barrington that we would offer them and that they need anyways.
Well, I'm just kind of curious, how does town property play into that philosophy? So if they're staging on, in a park or, town hall parking lot or something like that, like, does that count as using town resources for their operation?
Yeah, I've seen that recently. I think there's a community somewhere that's done that. They don't want essentially any federal assets on town property. I think it was just what you said, but they had staged somewhere. It was like a ball
I think
field.
Worcester. Yeah,
it may have been Worcester. I think Worcester did something there. Again, that's up for you folks to decide if that's something you want to look at. Again, it doesn't really affect us here at the PD.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to. I think that's what a lot of people are looking for from this policy too, to know exactly what our playbook is when this happens, and having things like that written down. Chief, I'm also curious, the raids last spring, what did communication with ICE look like afterwards? Because I know we talked about getting, making sure that we stay open. Did we get anything from them last time?
So the one in particular, I think, was in the Taconic lot, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we struggled that day trying to get a hold of people and again, asking those same questions I said I want to answer for you folks now is, what were the names and where did they go? Just the location. What facility? And those are the most two important things. We got that, I think a day later, it was very delayed, and I think some family members had made some better groundwork than we did that day, unfortunately. So that is an area of improvement I'd like to see on our part.
And I mean, I guess that's my question. Do we think there's a chance for relationships to improve? Everything that I've seen coming out of the federal side of this is that they are not they're playing by a different rule book or not by any rule book. So if we are kind of trying to create more rules to follow while they increasingly ignore them, what are we getting out of this? That's my
The thing I've seen most recently is the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the IACP. They have definitely come out. They are trying to get a summit together to get local law enforcement at the White House to figure out, how can we go about this better? I hope there's some headway there. Again, they're a big organization, so my faith is with them to hopefully get something squared away here sooner than later.
Yeah, that type of procedural justice stuff comes out of that group, and I think that would be really important. And then there's also post for us to follow, right? And then there's also the protect policy that the state delegation's putting together. So there'll be more guidelines for us to follow, in the town by those groups.
Well, that's another question I have too. How do you see this working with the executive order and the legislation coming out of Governor Healy's office right now? Have you had a chance to look at that?
Yeah, I helped prepare some of the briefs for that. So I think it's all working in tandem and concert together.
Great. And then I have one question. Not finding the notes. Oh, sorry, de-escalation. Can you give a little more clarification on exactly how you imagine that looking and what training would look like for that? As far as we're trying to de-escalate agents or trying to de-escalate citizens who might be interacting with them?
I think right now there's not enough resource around that. I feel like one of the so there have been community groups involved with Bridge or outside of Bridge that have done sort of how to disrupt, ICE and different actions. And I don't think our police force is ready to manage that one. Like they're not resourced yet. So I think there needs to be in those conversations, like some of this, how do we not arrest the person that's that we're all on the same side? So that kind of work, I think, is something that has to get built.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think that is going to be, when they return, I think you're going to see, we saw it last year, we will see even more force, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think everything in Minneapolis has shown that things can spiral quickly. So we need to know exactly what we're doing.
So I think from talking through and with Lee that piece is important about that procedural justice work. What Chief Carlotta talked about with the Chief Association is what are their tactical steps, and then our community side of this, those two kind of care team sides is how do we then make sure that our police department is in good relationship, prepared to understand what's going on. So if they're trying to figure out what ICE is doing and then what these groups are doing, it's a recipe for just chaos, right? And again, not necessarily to the end that we want. If it's chaos that's causing confusion so we can support people, that's great. But if it's just chaos, that's not good. So I think that that in those kinds of trainings we're talking about, the police academy, community academy piece, the procedural justice trainings that I've seen being done with community. It's not the norm, right? But there are certain police chiefs that have been able to do that. I think Chief Carlotta is one of that has that type of background and training and education and stuff that those things can be developed. That's where the town also needs to help resource, those types of programs.
So, yes, thanks for the work. So am I right in looking at the policy document from 2017, is that we're trying to get clarity. Police force. Basically about the procedures and rules that we can control.
Yes.
And back then, certainly now, there's a piece of this that's pretty much out of our control. So, am I right to look at it that the concern, one of the concerns right now is that our police department doesn't feel that their, I'll use the term rules of engagement are as clear as they can be on the police department. So where I get to is, it's very procedural, I'm not really addressing the elephant in the issue. Procedurally, we're always trying to get to a place where we've given our police department as clear guidance as we can, what we're expecting of them, and that the residents feel they fully understand the basic rules of collectively agreed. But I'm expressing the concern that you just had, where there's so many other moving pieces of this around our control. How do we have like a document where we've achieved what we're trying to achieve locally? Full clarity and buy-in on all local parties involved. So if these national organizations get to clarity on some of these points, then just how does that get?
I think we come back here, eventually we come back here. I think we have these mechanisms to speak, you know, in community groups, whether it's, you know, the partnership with the town and the police department and the nonprofits or the care team that we develop. But as information comes in, we will continue to respond. That's what I'm saying. Like, this isn't like the end. This is sort of like a means document of like how we're going to get there. Because the procedural piece right now, the only thing that I think we're talking about is the shift for the police department is that they won't say, okay, thank you, and hang up the phone, but they're gonna try to engage and say, and find out what the details of the apprehension, right? And that's a step. That is not where we wanna get, right? We wanna get to something that's a lot more protective of our community. And we wanna understand, you know, what the police department can do and yeah, that's kind of.
No, I completely agree. I just want to state what you said, because we always need to be careful that we're not obligating our police department to conduct themselves in a way that represents their aspirations as opposed to reality.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like I'm sort of, I don't want to say silly, like it's every data, but it'd be great if we had some like big, like great policy to put forward that was going to solve, but we cannot solve the nation's problems right here. But what we can do is just be as clear as possible about what we need of our police department, what types of relationship we need to be in, and then all commit, you know, to paying attention. I'm a person that gets very frustrated with seeing all the people that stand out in front of town hall, but they're not here now, because this is what we need as a community that can actually dig into listening and paying attention and doing the research to figure out what is the most that we can do as a town and a community, right? And you know, we've been talking about this for quite a few months, right? To get to even this place, and I think again establish a trust with the people that are kind of in these seats at the moment. But I think we have a lot of work to do. So the idea is that this document is setting up structures that exist in the town for and exist in your minds when you're doing budget and all those things.
It's almost like what strikes me as a possibility is that there would be like there would be like a third page to the policy.
Yeah, that all
the
this
procedures, and that we would be required to update it every quarter or something. Very
yes, that's what I meant by that part about aligning with your strategic priority process. And yeah, that's what I mean. It's like you keep revisiting it. It's a part of your budget conversations, because we can't do any of this work and get out of the systems and processes we're in without resources behind it. And it's a priority for many people that feel vulnerable right here in our town and in our surrounding area. So I think that's true. And so I think where we've gotten to, so we kind of agree on like what we'd like to see in some structures, and then the final document that shows up in May, right, is like you said, it's gonna be like a one pager that's very clear about what the addendum is and like what we can do. And, thanks.
Yeah, Chief, before I take a few more questions, do you have anything you want to add to these questions or comments?
Yeah, just real briefly, I know some of the focus is definitely on the ICE response, but I think the most important part to remember in this is that, we still want folks to come see us if they need help. Our folks who may not be legally present, we need them to come see us still, especially when they're the victims of crime. And that's the most important part, I think, that comes out of this is the clear messaging that, we are not doing any, federal civil immigration work. We are your hometown police department. If something's happened to you, we want you to come see us.
Thanks, Chief. That's really important.
Mhm.
Eileen, I didn't forget you. You've had your hand up so long, it must be getting tired.
It's a virtual hand.
Yes.
I just had a
Eileen,
couple,
go ahead.
I had a couple of questions. Page 10 of the proposed policy doesn't have anything on it. And I was wondering if that was deliberate.
The back of the document.
That's
Last page?
Ours aren't numbered that I can see, so
Yeah, I think it is just the back.
that's just the back page, Eileen. I think it's the one you're looking at, the same as ours.
Oh, okay, all right. And I had another question and I cannot remember it. Oh, March 9th is when it's going to be back on the agenda.
Correct.
Yes,
Yes, March 9th is, no, it won't be the 9th, it's the second. Second, we don't meet the 9th, we meet the second.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I also think another shift to mark is just, under your leadership, that it's, the town is holding the trust policy work and putting up a website versus it was just community last time. So I think that. Thank you.
James. Go right ahead. Just name and address, please.
James Gozone, 84 North Plain Road. I just want to say to Police Chief Carlotto, I just want to say thanks for saying that, there's a crime, people should report it. It's just, as an immigrant, what is happening is very scary. Your life is turned upside down, and unfortunately, someone who is an immigrant probably won't. So, but I do appreciate what you said. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Anyone else before we move ahead? Yes, you go ahead. Just state your name and address for the record.
Luke Prima, 301 Mining Valley Road, GB. And just to, it's kind of already been said, just a comment, and wanted to lift it up one more time, kind of speaking to what Garfield and Eric were bringing up, two separate things, but the community partnerships and the notification with ICE, and just how those can, just on a really crass base level, those can save our town a lot of money. And it might not be something that's like instant in terms of the community partnerships, but like long-term, having those in place that, an incident with the police, and I love the leadership we have now, but it could go wrong and cost the town a lot of money. Whereas when you have people that are trained in different social services, that might be something that can be much more smooth, as opposed to something that could get out of hand and cost the town in lawsuits and whatever. So I know that's taking it a little far, but it just on that level. And then the notification, Wellen kind of spoke to that, is that with our local economy can get hurt if everyone's feeling like they have to stay home and not be present, and that, that if there was a little more trust in that when we knew when ICE was here, that maybe folks wouldn't be missing doctor's appointments or staying indoors as much. Just wanted to share those.
Absolutely.
Can I say a little bit?
Real good.
We do know that there is a slight drop in kids attending school when the media is, reporting that there's a lot of ICE activity. And then we also know, just on the health side, that it's over 950 people to a primary care physician. So when CHP gets a day of cancellations, it really impacts the overall health of our community. So It's just to kind of fit with the same.
That's Kathy Cogan online, state your name and address.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. 10 Ramsdale Road, Great Barrington, Mass.
Thank you.
I have just a few questions. I want to clarify. Great Barrington does not take part in ICE's 287G program?
You want to just answer that?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. And the other thing is, I was just struck by, when people are taken to detention centers, which is outside of Berkshire County, can there be, to think about, can there be avenues or people, part of the community, part of police participation, helping those people that have been taken to detention centers to make sure they're safe, they have communication with their lawyers, with their families? How can we address that?
Thank you, Kathy. Chief, you want to answer that?
Yeah, that unfortunately takes a lot of resources, and we just don't have that capacity right now. The biggest thing I just do is probably just find out, again, the name and what facility they went to.
And Chief, when you say you find out the name and the facility, would you then contact people, family of the person that's been taken, if you know who they are?
Yeah, that's correct. Try to offer them whatever we can to get them, factual information about
Okay.
location, and so they
Thank
can.
you. That's thank you very much. Appreciate it.
John? You have something?
Yeah,
Name and address, John. please.
John Breasted, 151 Christian Hill Road. I just have a question for information for Chief Carlotto. In terms of existing applicable state law. If a resident of Great Barrington or a visitor to Great Barrington came into the triplex parking lot carrying what looks like an assault style AR-15 type weapon, are there state laws which prohibit carrying that kind of gun in a public or private space in any municipality in Massachusetts? If I went into the parking lot of the triplex and I was carrying one of those guns, would I be liable to violation of an existing state law?
Let him answer, John, please.
Yeah, so John, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals, trying to apply that to a factual incident that happened, last year.
Thank you, Chief. Who else said their hand up?
No, I didn't hear what he said.
He said he's not getting into hypotheticals, the same thing we told you.
It's not a hypothetical.
Okay, John, we're gonna move ahead. Who else? Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much, Glenn.
It's a question about
John,
existing state law.
please, thank you. Thank you. Okay, next, discussion of proposed Berkshire Regional Transport Authority route changes and possible vote to direct the town manager to send letter of concern. Liz?
I'm actually gonna turn it over to Assistant Manager.
Liz?
Everyone, you have in your packet a summary of the proposed route changes that Berkshire Regional Transit Authority, BRTA, has put out. They're relatively major changes that are proposed, and the BRTA website refers to these, what are actually service spots, refers to them as route realignments. And these route realignments, as is summarized in your packet, will mean a lot less service in Great Barrington if they're approved, and a doubling of ride time between Great Barrington and most other spots. So to get from Great Barrington to Pittsfield, not only will you have fewer options, that will take not 1 hour, but 2 hours to get there, if you can get that option. A quick summary of some of the other proposals. They would propose the full elimination of the current 921 express bus between Great Barrington and Pittsfield, a significant reduction of the existing local Route 21 from Great Barrington to Lee. In total, BRTA is proposing cutting 11 out of the current 18 Great Barrington bus weekday trips. So essentially, as I said, service availability will fall by almost half, and your ride time will nearly double. The BRTA does have a series of meetings and public comment sessions proposed to take input about this. But the material on the BRTA website is very difficult to, unless you're a seasoned rider of the system, and you know where all the routes currently go, and you can digest what the route realignments are and what they might mean for you personally, it's very difficult to follow. So I would urge you to look at the material that we've summarized in the select board's packet tonight, as well as BRTA's information that's out for public comment, and either attend one of those BRTA meetings and or send written comment. There are a series of public meetings on the 12th, 19th, and 26th at various times of the day by Zoom. I'm sorry, remotely via Teams. There's also two meetings, one morning meeting on the 11th and one afternoon meeting on the 25th in person at BRTA. So they do have a series of opportunities for the public to comment, but given the sort of density of the information on their website, we thought it would be helpful to summarize that for you. Again, service availability in South County would fall by nearly half, and ride times would nearly double. And express what bus would be and then we complete.
So Chris, I have a couple of questions. Phil, you're gonna want to speak because you're our representative. So my question is, would it make sense for we authorize you to write a letter to the BRTA from the select board, maybe approve it at our next meeting if there's time? Because I don't know whoever thought this was a good idea for South County. I mean, if you live in Pittsfield, which a lot of people do because they can't afford to live down here and work in South County, it's almost impossible to do both. So,
I mean, speaking from a personal standpoint, to get to jury duty actually would not be possible to just carry out your civic obligation. Not possible unless you've got a person to do that.
Phil, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a representative on this committee. I'm relatively new to it, but there's definitely, say that, you know, we're not their highest priority. I guess I'll put it very simple.
It's pretty obvious.
But the tricky part is that, you know, there is a new executive director coming in. Essentially came in a month or two ago, and almost immediately these proposals went out. Now, they're saying that in part, these changes represent diminished ridership on the part of South County residents. I think our response is that some part of that reduced ridership is because the scheduling has been so erratic because of the shortage of drivers. So it gets a little, you know, sort of fingers pointing in different directions as to sort of what's going on. But net, it's really important that we can get actual people who use these, use transit in this manner to speak up and express themselves. I think that will really greatly help, you know, our position, and all the, you know, response from staff would be terrific. And I'll say that if any riders are confused about this, I certainly encourage them to reach out to Chris. Tate's been very helpful in sort of translating all the, what I refer to as transit techno speak into something more understandable. So the more input we get, the better.
Are they gonna change their name?
Pardon me?
I said, are they gonna change the name since they're not servicing all of Berkshire County anymore? They're gonna be.
Yeah, well, they're actually, you know, I don't want to criticize it, but there's a lot of effort being put into connecting North County with the hill towns. And I can't speak to whether or not that's deserved or not, but it's sort of striking that initiative is going on, whereas they're looking to cut service.
At whose expense are they doing that, is what you're saying?
Yeah. I'll need tape to help me figure out how that's gonna work, but it's clear that, again, they're cutting service for us in a very material way, so.
So I'd like a motion to authorize, for us to authorize the assistant town manager to write a letter that we will approve on February 23rd with our concerns.
So moved.
Second?
Second question.
Of course, go ahead.
Right. Excuse me, if we're not going to increase our ridership, then we can do this till we're blue in the face. If it's not going to, everything's a dollar bill. And if we're not generating any monies for them, then they're not gonna come here. I don't know how we can make people take the bus more often, because that's really what it is. People aren't riding the bus, so they're cutting it back to save money, but everything revolves around the dollar bill.
Phil, do
That
you
part
want
of
to
it. Is it-
answer? Let Phil or Chris answer that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, that's kind of their position, I would say. I think our counter to that is that, if, as Steve mentioned, if you have someone living in South County, working near Pittsfield, then if they can't rely on the bus showing up every day, then they really can't use the system at all, and they've had to find other means. I don't know what that would be, but they've had to find other means. So our position is that if you have reliable bus service, more people will be using it.
Yes.
So we have to just.
We saw the same thing, Garfield, with the South County Connector, as we had some troubles filling all of our driver slots, we didn't have rides available, our ridership went down. Once we had the drivers, ridership started going up. If service is available and dependable, people will use them. I will point out that you'll see this in the budget books, the town of Great Barrington pays an assessment to BRTA every year to the tune of $60,000.
Yeah.
Plus or minus. Could continue to pay that, whether or not we have 18 rides a day, or 2 rides a day, or whatever it is. We're still gonna have to fork over the money. So, the question is, what are you paying for?
The other second part of it is, can we pick that up with our own South County? Right.
Well, I think there are a lot of potential opportunities for South County and BRTA to continue to work together. We've seen a lot of people who will call the South County Connector for service. The dispatcher will say, well, we can't do that, but if BRTA is leaving, downtown Great Barrington X, we can meet you there. So there's a possibility to support each other. And in some cases, South County could go all the way to Pittsfield, but it's about money and reliability.
Sorry, just the last point on that is, again, I don't, it's unclear, but much better, particularly with their new director coming in, is to do more of an overall assessment as to how they serve South County. For example, it's not clear to me whether or not the bus route that is servicing Simon's Rock, whether or not that route's been modified or not. So obviously, the demand for that service has changed. That's exactly what they're doing. And I don't have any sense that updating the whole system. There's a better way to approach it.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Chris, thank you very much. It's very helpful. Okay. Update on Prosperity Way project, map 26, lot 53A, from Assistant Town Manager Chris Rumble, Affordable Housing Trust Fund Co-Chair Amanda Timpane, and Fred Clark.
Hello, I'm Fred Clark. I serve along with Ann Payne as the co-chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. And we had an invitation to come in and update you with all of our program summaries. I believe there was a point in your packet very, very brief, just go through the whole thing and just give you a foundation of what we do. And then Amanda can take you through some of the other parts here. I always start with the mission statement. Our mission is to provide housing options that are affordable, low and moderate income households in Great Barrington. We were established by town meeting in 2017, so it's about 8 years that we've been going. And the reason we were established was what it was, our foundation for that was one of the main recommendations in the master plan that we published in 2013, that it was a big identification of what was missing. So in the 8 years we've been going, we've established several different programs, we've had some great successes, and I just want to take you through a couple of them. We run basically 5 different kinds of programs or projects as we go forward. We have a housing stabilization program that we work with Construct to provide emergency rental support. That was really much more active during the pandemic, but we are still running that program. We have a 0% interest down payment loan. Somebody wants to buy a house, they may have enough money to qualify for a mortgage. We can help them out. We can pay up to 10% of the housing cost, up to $25,000. It's a loan. It's a 0 interest loan that they never have to pay back until they sell the house. And it helps to get people into a house. We've done 13 of them, I think. We have one now that Chris is on Chris's desk for a young person who's buying a house in Great Barrington. And so it helps a lot of people to buy their first house. We have an accessory dwelling unit program that we started last year. We ran it out as a pilot program. This is again, a loan program to help people build accessory dwelling units. We had worked with the planning board when they passed the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, and to sort of create an incentive program. Everybody knows there's a housing crisis. We need more housing units. And this is one way that we can get them. We have the foundation, the bylaw. This is a program that can help people to do that. And accessory dwelling units could be anything from an apartment over a garage, or refitting part of your house to a 2-family guest apartment, or a freestanding building. I like to think about it as it's an old idea that's come around and it's new here. I mean, a town like this, particularly Housatonic where I live, was full of 2 families, and that's how people got into their houses. That's how you get an apartment available. It's an old idea that's new, is what I'm saying. We also have a grant program that is an affordable housing development program, where we can work either with nonprofits or with private developers to essentially ensure that they'll rent their apartment at an affordable rate. They get a grant money, and the unit is deed restricted going forward there to keep it at a very affordable rate. We've done a few of those. We have a RFP that's going live this week for other grant programs.
Spread the word.
We'll be spreading that out. Finally, the 5th leg of our 5-legged stool is property acquisition. And so we have 3 projects that we can talk about. The first is Grove Street. This was a tax title house that was taken in land court for non-payment of taxes. It's this house next to the Grove Street Park. The Selectboard asked the Affordable Housing Trust to find a way to develop it. We put an RFP out. Habitat was a successful bidder on that. And that house was sold to a local family. It's back on the tax rolls, been repaired. and it's a wonderful success story. The other housing projects that we've been involved with is the project in North Lane Road, now known as Prosperity Way, that we purchased many years ago. And Ananda can talk a little bit more about that. And Habitat again came in with a successful respondent to the RFP. They're in the process of building 20 houses there. They have 6 houses right now in phase 1 that's going forward. It's been a very successful project in my view. It's taken a lot longer than one might have thought when we first started it in 2019. But I think it's going to be really successful. And it's the biggest project Habitat's ever undertaken. It's their first project other than our Grove Street house south of Pittsfield. And it's a wonderful thing. It's going to be, well, I think it's a fabulous project. The final one is last year we were able to buy from Berkshire Natural Resources the parcel on 183 up from Taft called the Rising Dale Ball Field. It had in fact been a softball field. There's still a backstop there if you see it. It's about a 3-acre parcel. And last fall and summer, we went through a variety of community input meetings to try to get a sense of what I think everybody at this table, all of the select board members came to at least one of our community input meetings. So you guys saw that firsthand, and we'll be going forward with that as we move on. Those are the 5 programs that we run, and our primary funding source has been CPA money, and we've been very successful at building a foundation with CPA and a partnership there. And I think that we've had a few bumpy years, but we finally come through the last couple of years where we have a good relationship with CPA. And I think that's going to work out well. Also, town meeting voted several years ago that it was their will that 100% of the short-term rental registration money be used for affordable housing. And to date, they've transferred a little over $72,000 to us. So that's another source that we have going forward. Amanda, would you like to talk about the other parts?
Yeah, I'm gonna sit down. If you would like to pull up the chair, I would invite you to. Hi, everybody. So my job tonight is to walk you through a little bit more of the update specific to Prosperity Way. In the packet, in the slides, there's a pretty comprehensive timeline. But just to say out loud for folks in the room, this project really, the first idea of it was back in July of 2019. The land purchase was completed in July 2020. The engineering mass works funding was awarded in October 2021. And then August 9th, 2024, we move into the infrastructure bid is opened, and that October, the brushwork begins. This past summer, the 5 modular homes and 1 frame house, that work began. August was the development agreement was signed. This past fall, the infrastructure work, which was town responsibility, was substantially completed, funded through the Mass Work grant, and January, the ownership of the site was transferred to Habitat. So the next steps going forward, that moves us into a period of the project where the relationship between the trust and Habitat is really governed by the development agreement. And a summary of what that agreement looks like is that it establishes a framework under which Habitat is responsible for design, development, construction, financing, and operation of a permanent affordable homeownership project on trust-owned land, while the trust and the town retain long-term affordability oversight, affordability controls, and responsibility for certain public infrastructure and support functions. Our next steps really move us into, now that we're past the deed transfer, move us into that very specific type of oversight. So the trust is moving into quarterly reporting with Habitat, where Habitat will report on the components of the agreement they're responsible for, and this will be both an oversight mechanism and also a conduit for information for the public, as the trust will review those on a quarterly basis. They'll be reporting on the construction, where they are in the phases, any changes to, any changes to how they thought something was going to unfold, those types of things, as well as the application process, including number of applications and the kind of geography they're spread out over. Well, this is the problem. I can't see with my glasses on. I can't see the writing without them. And they don't go too far down my nose.
Want me to hold the paper over here?
I mean, probably Liz is right distance. So we were also asked to share a little bit about our approach to oversight. So during the infrastructure phase, the majority of the work was really within the town's responsibility and being managed by staff. And Fred actually did a lot of bridging work and went to most meetings that occurred. And so the trust was getting pretty regular information just about what was happening in those conversations, as well as periodic updates from Habitat. And Habitat responded to several inquiries with specific questions, which is pretty much how the relationship has been. The trust is providing information to the CPC, and so that's a specific place in the calendar when we're going to CPC. There might be specific questions, and we've often reached out to Habitat for specific information at that point to share. But throughout 2024 and 2025, we've had pretty consistent, sometimes monthly updates, depending on what was happening with the work. And in addition to that, the Mass Works grant, Chris has been providing me over the course of the spending of that grant financial updates on a quarterly to 6-month basis for the financial reporting that I manage for the trust. Lastly, challenges. What kinds of challenges? Well, the cost of construction materials has dramatically changed between 2019 and now. So that's been something that all different aspects of the project has had to manage, whether it's the infrastructure side or on Habitat's end, as they've had to adjust across their projects. To me, people who know me know that I grew up in a construction family, so to me, there have been more normal construction timeline adjustments. That we've had open communication with town staff about on the infrastructure side. And then on the application side of things, I think there was definitely an initial phase where there were many conversations in trust meetings with Habitat about how to get the information out into the community. In the most recent CPC process, some of what we talked about was how to get data earlier in the process about the geography from which people are applying, with the goal of making sure that people in South County are among the applicants. So I think that's a summary of what I wanted to share in terms of challenges. Chris, were there any other challenges that were on your mind that I missed in my notes.
Well, I think as Fred mentioned, it's the biggest project Central Berkshire Habitat has ever done. It's certainly unique in the town's experience. The town has not done a project like this before. So it was a little bit new to all of us. But we were very fortunate with 2 MassWorks grants, one for the initial design work, and the second for actual putting in the infrastructure. There were some hiccups during the permitting phase when some town boards wanted more units than what Habitat and the neighbors had discussed. And ultimately, it got back to Habitat proposed and is now on its way towards building those 20 units. There were some changes over time about how exactly the land should be owned and developed. How would it be permitted with a comprehensive 40B permit, with a special permit under the town's bylaws? Those conversations happened over the course of several years. Eventually, the special permit route through the planned unit residential development was the route through zoning, and that permitted the 20 homes in a clustered format. Then that required a formal subdivision. That was finally done. All of these were years-long steps, and I think it took a lot longer than anybody thought it would. And then drawing up all the legal documents at each and every stage was also taking quite a while. I will say that once the general contractor for Prosperity Way was selected, and we had the funds in place and the plan was permitted, the work went really smoothly. So we were really fortunate to have a great contractor who produced with other town projects, and that they really did well out there. And they were also able to navigate the situation where Habitat had modular homes that it had wanted to place on site, and there was a situation where the town still owned land. Could Habitat get in and put houses on? So we had to navigate that situation. We were able to do that successfully. But all of that took a lot of conversation. It was quite a learning experience. I think there will be 20 happy homeowners there eventually. It's a really significant impact. That's great. Habitat now owns the land. The town will own the road itself. And the plan is that as homeowners buy units at Habitat, then eventually the homeowners association they will own in common.
Which was deed restricted.
Deed restricted because it was purchased with CPA funds, so it's deed restricted permanently. 100% of the area. As Amanda said, Habitat's reporting to the trust now will center on how are they meeting those requirements, how many homes are built, occupied, sold, how is the marketing proceeding, etc. Hear more about that as
Habitat is a really robust program. They're really good about building community. They have a lot of experience doing that. They work with people and provide a lot of financial counseling. A lot of people that are their clients haven't owned a home before. So we went through the process on the Grove Street house and where you go to homeowner school. It's a lot. Things like that. But also they do a lot of financial counseling. People want to buy a home, need to buy a home, but have some deficits on their record. They work with people. They help them do get in shape. They help them find the right programs for their needs there, and it's really robust. Also, it's well known. Well, it's just well known that they have a volunteer component, a mandatory requirement for work. Yes.
So our next report will come once we've got completed March, we'll get the first full quarter. During the CPC, the CPA application process, Habitat provided some data at that point, which was in December, about where they were in the application process. They're further along now, but this is from that time period. At that point in phase one, there's step one, that's a two-step application process. Habitat had received 261 applications expressing interest in Prosperity Way, which was the pre-screen phase of the process. Of these, 76 were eligible to submit a full application and were invited to do so. And that was the step that was currently underway in December. And that's where we began a conversation about adding a data point so that we could collect at the pre-screen phase information about the geography from which applicants are coming from.
Let's take questions from the
And then
board.
of the applicants that weren't invited to proceed to step two, some of those applicants are income eligible, but like maybe their credit score isn't where it needs to be to move forward. So they then are recommended for other programs of that with the goal that they'll be able to apply in the future.
Thanks. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, Amanda, thank you for saying that. I guess you kind of took one of my main questions from me right there, but a lot of the questions I get, and there's several folks at a Housatonic Improvement Committee meeting. You lost. I might have lost the cable there. Our last high C meeting, there's several folks there asking about the application process. They had concerns that that people weren't hearing about it, or that not many people were applying, but it sounds, the information you just shared with us sounds different than that. So I guess.
And I would like, part of why we want to see what's happening at phase one is that we can't tell in that phase if we're seeing as robust a response locally as we hear from the community.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that Carolyn, who I think is on Zoom, she's the CEO at Habitat. That's something Carolyn has suggested we can start collecting that data as a way to kind of look at that.
Yeah.
I also want to mention that Habitat has an open house this weekend on Saturday, and then on one afternoon next week, and I don't remember the date right now. So, on Prosperity Way, for anyone who wants to come and see what's going on, you're all welcome.
You know what that time is for that?
Carolyn.
Carolyn, do you want to just talk about the open house?
I believe it's from 10 to 1. And I thought it was on the 21st. That's on my calendar. I didn't think it was on Valentine's Day, but I might be incorrect. Because we have open houses both in Pittsfield and several in Housatonic. So, and I'm looking at my paper calendar, not a digital calendar. So I'll make sure Erin sends that out for everybody. But I know that we've been getting calls of folks that were saying, yes, they are planning on attending. So we're excited about that. We'll have people be able to walk through the ranch as well as the 2-story. We have, we're hoping to be able to put somebody under contract this week for one of the units. We now are up to 38 people from Great Barrington and 22 specifically from Housatonic, and that are have done pre-screens, and only 35 non-Berkshire residents have even done pre-screens. And we also had, since the report that Ananda just announced, we had 69 new pre-screens. So as the weather is thawing, which is pretty similar to real estate, as the weather is getting a little bit less severe, more people are thinking about ownership.
Thanks, Bill. Other questions from the board?
Yeah, just clarify the history briefly. It's quite a lot of work here, I'm trying to understand. So the trust bought the parcel with CPA funds. I'm just trying to make sure I get this right. The Mass Works grant was used for site prep, utility connections, like water or septic,
Building the road.
building the road. So, and is Habitat basically taking care of the initial funds required to order the modular home?
Yes.
Okay, so they're taking care of all that.
Yes.
And the reason for, the one stick built home right adjacent to the modular homes, was that?
Well,
What was that?
I would let Carolyn answer
Yeah,
that.
Carolyn, go right ahead.
We should not be speaking on behalf of.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer what the theory behind that was. We were very fortunate to have 377 builders volunteer to get that off the ground in 1 week to get that started. And then Jay Schmiegel was going to do the roof for us. And we also wanted to be able to have a place for our core volunteers to be trained and to be able to have a consistent place to build, because modulars take, under normal circumstances, take less time than a stick built. So we were concerned that we would not have enough labor hours to do what we think is really important, to build the ability for people to know how to maintain their homes, as well as keeping our core volunteers engaged.
Thank you, Phil.
And what can you say about the big picture, the timing for the remainder of the modular homes?
Carol?
So right now, the building committee is actually analyzing the data from the last go round of pre-screens to see if we want to do any changes in the modular design, based on the fact that a lot of the families that are coming from Great Barrington and from Housatonic are smaller. So we want to make sure that we're building for what the community needs. So that's one thing, but they actually have another building committee meeting tomorrow. We had done one design change already, but we're also trying to, at the open houses, we want to find out if there's any folks that would prefer a ranch rather than a 2-story, because maybe they have aging in place issues or mobility issues or things of that nature. So we just want to make sure that before we order the next set, that we are building what the people want / need. So right now, the goal is to put in our order the end of March, provided we have the units already either under contract or projected to be under contract, which I anticipate will be able to happen because many of our applicants have now provided their letters of pre-approval from their lenders.
All right, thank you. Eileen, you have your hand up?
I was wondering what's happening with the, excuse me, the SMART grant funds that were used to the foundations. Is that paid back already, or will it be paid back, or is that an extra contribution from the town? Just curious.
I think that's a Chris question.
Sorry that my voice is going. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm doing this. Thank you. Chris?
The smart growth funds that the town contributed was a straight grant. It wasn't a repayment, it was a straight grant. So those
It
were
was
the
a grant to the town.
So
weren't the foundations, because they're part of a house, To be paid by
Elaine, just let
Habitat.
Chris finish, please. Go ahead, Chris.
So those were funds granted to the town. The town, when I say they were granted to the project, the town paid those funds directly to the contractor for those foundations. The reason we were able to do that is those funds are available for affordable housing and public infrastructure to support affordable housing. That includes things that are permanently deed restricted, which these are. So that's why those smart growth grant funds could be used for this purpose.
Oh, thank you. I've been seeking an explanation and hadn't gotten one until just now. So thanks.
Thanks, Eileen. Anyone want to talk?
Well, I would love to speak.
Yeah, you can have 3 minutes, Jimmy. Go right ahead.
3 minutes?
That's what everyone gets.
So, I guess I have a couple questions. How many homes have been sold?
We can't sell the homes until they're completed, Jim.
What about, why don't you speak and then we can answer all your questions?
Okay,
Right, how about you let me run?
in June, I had asked both the select board and the people from Habitat who was paying for and who was digging the foundations. And Steve and Eric, do you remember what I was told? We can have this conversation because this is on the agenda, so we can have this
Oh,
conversation.
yeah, there's no doubt about it. The town was not paying for it.
The town was not paying for it.
And they did a smart grant was paying for it.
No. Habitat for Humanity was paying for it. That's what we were told. That's what is in the minutes that were approved,
That is true.
okay? So how did it go from Habitat to the town of Great Barrington through Smart Growth Grant paying for it at $103,200?
It's not, it wasn't a select board, wasn't involved in that.
Okay, so I'm asking the select board. At the same time, I understand, and I have email chains, that Habitat for Humanity was struggling for funds. Habitat for Humanity was reassured on numerous occasions by the town planner that there were funds available to take care of a lot of things. $103,000 was removed from the Smart Growth Grant meant for a completely separate district under a Smart Growth Grant overlay district, not that section of Housatonic. I want to know how, when there was no formal contract signed in the contract, in the bid, no mention of foundations in a bid or in the contract approved. Yet we were able to spend $103,000 on foundations without putting that extra work out to bid. Sure, it was real easy to put on paper that it's a change order. State law, state regulations dictate what is a change order and what MassWorks grants cover. MassWorks grants cover everything horizontal. Anything vertical is not covered under MassWorks grant. Vertical work includes foundations up. The MassWorks grant, again, I have 100 and some million pages worth. MassWorks grant only covered the infrastructure work to the edge of the road. We managed to connect sewer. We managed to connect electric, water, all to those homes without any of it going back out to bid. And it was never covered under the original scope of work or the original bid. $103,000 and then another $83,000 was added to that from that Smart Growth Grant. Smart Growth Grant could have done a lot more than dig foundations. The responsibility for the foundations, according to the grant, or according to the contract, was the responsibility of Habitat for Humanity. It wasn't the responsibility of anything, including Great Barrington, to come up with a grant for it.
Your time is up, Jim. Thank you. Vivian Orlowski.
Hi, thank you, Vivian Orlowski in Lakeview Road. I'm greatly appreciate all the work of the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I've attended many of the meetings over the years, including many of the subcommittee meetings on the ADUs. And on page 4 of the slide presentation, I see that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund also serves as an advocate and resource for programs and regulations that support affordable housing. And the first point is support for the accessory dwelling unit ADU bylaw. And then the second point is advocating for the real estate property tax exemption and property tax exemption. I would appreciate, first of all, an explanation between those two types of exemptions. And secondly, to ask whether there was any consideration by the board that advocating for residential property tax exemption could push some homeowners who would like to build an ADU to serve the community and to increase their own sources of income. And it could put them in the awkward position that when they add the ADU, their property values push them into the category of residential homeowners who are then getting increased taxes through the residential tax exemption.
So Vivian, with due respect, we're not going to discuss the residential tax exemption or the property tax exemption this evening. If you have questions on it about the Affordable Housing Trust, you should attend their meetings. I'm sure you do. Tonight, the agenda item is Prosperity Way, and we will be discussing that again at another meeting, but we're late into the meeting and that's not even on the agenda.
No, I'm not asking them to give a position. I'm just asking whether they discussed it at all. No, I'm not asking them to get into it.
It's not even on the agenda. We're not going to get into what they discussed. That's more appropriate at their meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. For the next one, I am going to recuse myself because I am a employee of Berkshire Health Systems and Fairview Hospital. And I think they're still speaking to me, even though they've been here for almost 2 hours.
All right, we're gonna review the special permit application by Joe LaRocha, Vice President of Facilities at Berkshire Health Systems, to construct an addition to Fairview Hospital at 2729 Lewis Avenue. We're looking to send a comment and or recommendations to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Who would like to lead?
Vice President of Facilities for Berkshire Health Systems at Fairview Hospital. Run by Tony Sabelli, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Fairview Hospital. And Steve Matthew, you may know, is a civil engineer of record and is done. So we're here to review and answer any questions regarding our new project. A 2-story building addition to the Fairview Hospital campus. And will create a new operating room suite, an endoscopy suite, and an emergency department, imaging department within the building, including a new MRI service that will be at campus. Hand it over to Vicki to provide a little bit more detail, and then we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Hi, Vicki Donahue, Council for Fairview Hospital. So the application has been put before the hospital is for special permit for expansion. already had several conversations with various boards and departments. Recommendation to project forward to the CPA by the Conservation Commission and Board of Health tonight. And then we'll also be going before the planning board for recommendation and site plan approval on Thursday. And we'll probably have the CPA. So as Joe said, then this is a project that's in the making, long in the making in terms of the effort and the thoughtfulness and the desire on the part of the hospital to move forward, and I think also in terms of the desire of the community. The existing and the properties that are involved are place that moves out, which is the existing entrance for the hospital, and then we have the Zero West street location, which is all what we use as the entire campus. House next door, which we be using as accessory use of that footprint. So the existing hospital is approximately 86,700 square feet, and then on the campus we also have a medical office building and then the new project would be this two-story addition. The addition is about 44,000 square feet, 22,000 square feet for each building level. And then the remaining 6,000 square feet is for connectors that will go from the hospital over to the new structure. And one's going to be for the back of the house kind of entrance, and then the main lobby that connects the two buildings will be actually on the opposite side of Lewis Ave for that location. Joe talked a little bit about the what the services are that are going to be in that location. I think a lot of that is covered in the application as well. So I think that other than that, then if there are any questions, we can certainly address them, or we can let you see what we have beyond, or what you have the plans for what is going to be presented to the CBA.
So does the board have any questions?
No, well, I think it's a great project, first of all. The property that was recently purchased on West Avenue, the private home, just on the near the I guess the existing driveway.
The existing West Ave.
Right. My sense of direction is horrible, so bear with me. So is that home going to be used in its current state, or is that going to be torn down for something else?
No, our intent is to use that for the construction team to have their offices. And when we're complete, we don't intend to make any renovations to it when it's completed. We may use it for physician overnight sleeping or any nursing people we have that are travelers. My hope was that we could prevent these large job trailers from being on the site campus with what we call in the construction industry blue houses or portable toilets. And we wanted to keep the campus, because it's continued to be operational throughout the project, we don't have a lot of parking right now, and so enable us to have most of the construction team guys, the meeting rooms and their offices and our drawing meetings to be held in this house. A little later during the job.
So you have no plans to take that down, and it sounds like you don't have any plans to develop the front lawn of that property is quite large.
Yeah, it sets back quite a bit. There's no plans to convey work to that
And if
property.
we were to change your mind one day, which happens, you'd have to go back to the planning board.
Correct. Yeah, we have no plans to change that. We just want to use it during the couple of years.
And that parcel is not part of this application process.
Okay, I understand. And you obviously, for the new, proposed building and the new parking, obviously, I'm assuming that you own that property currently, but you, right now, you're wrapping the old emergency room driveway with the proposed driveway, and you still have those other private homes that are still in place inside, between those two driveways, do I have that right?
Yes, just one.
Steve, do you happen to have a map of the site, the bigger ones for everybody to see? That would be helpful.
Well, treacherous.
I know. It's last minute change. Let's see. This is the site plan. Can everybody see that?
Yes, thank you.
Right, so I'm referring to the new emergency room driveway and the existing one, so you.
Right, so this parcel, this home here is on a parcel owned by the applicant, which has a house. And then there is one house lot in between the existing emergency room access and the applicant's property here with the new driveway. Is that what you mean?
Right, so my Captain Obvious comment is that seems a little bit unruly. Is that?
I know you've spoken to the owner of that home.
I have, yes. And the piece of property that the hospital owns is where the driveway will carry out, that we don't intend to change or have to affect any of our neighboring properties. But during the public hearing we had back in the fall, we did address it directly, and we did have abutters meetings with all of our neighbors and let them, privately come and talk with us about it. So far we've received great support for the project and don't intend to really affect either one of our, either west side or east side neighbors on that project.
Well, great, and it sounds like, it looks like you're not altering the existing layout for the ambulance operation, right?
Well, it is. So the proposal, the current ambulance access is here up to the emergency room. The new proposal is to do a new curb cut on in this location to the east. And this is the new primary ambulance access. And then there's a new ambulance bay, two ambulance bay here.
No, I hear you. I was really referring to their headquarters.
Oh, down here.
At the other end.
That's over here, right, correct. Right.
Not our emergency department, but the actual ambulance.
Right.
Yeah, no change.
But that's ambulance, that's Fairview owned property, as I understand it?
That's correct.
And you have an existing lease arrangement with them, and
we do.
It's not gonna be affected by it.
No.
And there's one mention in here about an additional, smaller structure, either a metallic or prefab structure that's gonna be put up.
That's for the MRI unit, which is this piece right here.
Oh, that's sticking out there?
Correct.
Is that because of the fairly detailed requirements that are required for housing MRI?
Yeah, this MRI unit will be a cassette type. So it's not a mobile trailer type, it's going to be a permanently fixed type.
Yeah.
And when you buy those units, they come with an enclosure that can be attached to an existing building. So it's a more permanent structure than you would see of a mobile MRI trailer.
Will that MRA be utilized for Great Barrington people? In other words, we don't have to drive to Pittsfield anymore for an MRI?
That's correct.
It's good.
All right, thank you.
So, Ben, you have any questions or?
The only thing that I'm just a little unclear of is, it doesn't pertain to the whole, I think this project is fantastic and very well made. The walk-in for the emergency department, which is listed as like being right there, but on the actual layout, it doesn't quite seem, am I missing
On
the door?
On the layout, so these are the elevation views.
I'm looking at this page in the packet, just so where is that in reference to the waiting room for the emergency department?
So if you're standing facing west in the new parking lot, the front door entrance right about in the center of the building.
Yeah.
is the main entrance to the ED with the waiting room right there. Then there's a corridor that goes off to the left that will take you over to the imaging side.
Oh, okay.
See
I think
that?
I understand. Yeah, kind of where the two
The
departments.
main waiting for
Lit
ED will be
there.
right there at the front.
Yeah, on this plan,
Yeah.
you come in the main access and then the ED waiting rooms.
So there's a door just kind of in the waiting room area essentially, is that?
I believe the door's right
Next to it?
here. Here, right.
So you'll travel this side to the emergency department and you'll travel this side to the imaging center. So
It's right here on the elevation view.
I'll ask a silly question. I'm sure everything is ADA
Yes.
certified.
Yep.
So I just want to circle back to Phil's question, to make sure I understand it. So, new curb cut going in, here, and then the existing two driveways, or is one of those getting eliminated?
It's not, no, this driveway, the existing driveway to the emergency room will be used for deliveries and service.
Right.
And then this driveway is going to stay for pedestrian access. This access is the new courtyard. There's going to be a courtyard enclosed here. And then also for any fire protection needs, there'll be a spur.
And it kind of stops at that building. It doesn't go through because of the connector points. Okay, so people are walking up that, biking up it.
Right.
Emergency vehicles can get up there for whatever safety measures. Excellent, okay. And then, just curious, this is obviously a well-needed and amazing thing that you're proposing here. So I do appreciate that, as I'm sure everybody in town does. Curious on the duration of the construction times and the phases of it. If you have thoughts on
If all
that.
goes well through the planning process, our next steps will be to get to Mass DPH and submit our plan review requests. And typically takes them some time, but we can do that in early phases. So we could do site work, some foundation work. Our hope would be in April sometime.
To get started?
We could get started. We prepared the permit sets for the building department, and as soon as we get through the ZBA process, then we'll get to the building department. And we don't expect any changes from SDPA, but there are regulations that they have to review these plans, and they may have recommendations about some things, but typically we've done enough of this work and know what they need, and so I think we'll be in pretty good shape with DPH.
Nice. And then during the construction phase, we'll just work within the noise ordinance and time restraints. Yeah, great.
We've done, we'll have a geothermal project on this job, and we intend it to be LEED Silver certified. So we've gotten some great information on the site that's going to make it much easier. You know, we're not going to see any lead, we're not going to see any real water issues with respect to the foundation. So we're very fortunate to have that piece of property right next to us that's part of the hospital that we can construct pretty easily. So fingers crossed, it looks like it's going to be a nice project.
Nice, great. And then, so just to circle back, starting in April, and I know all projects take time and there's unexpected delays, but when are we projecting?
We're projecting about an 18-month build.
Nice, excellent.
One last one, start are you, when the new building is done, are you planning renovations for the two existing structures?
The hospital proper.
Yeah.
Our hope is that once we get moved in the emergency department and the operating room suite, the first piece of it we're looking at is to be able to prevent, currently when services are delivered to the hospital, supplies, trucks and that sort, they have to travel in off of Lewis Avenue and then drive into the actual visitor parking lot to back up to our current loading dock. Our plan is that we'll convert the old emergency department space and that dock area to a service entrance only, so trucks come back into that dock and then go directly back out without coming through the visitor parking lot. And then we have some plans in the existing hospital to renovate a floor of the hospital to get all of the private beds on one of the floors of the hospital, but that's a future endeavor.
And that standalone building, which is on the southern piece.
This here?
Yeah.
Yep. That medical office building that currently houses Berkshire Orthopedics and CHP.
Right.
We have no plan to touch that. Right now, we're gonna leave that alone.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Any other questions from the board or?
Are we, so have you had initial meetings with the planning board, or where is that?
No, so, we've been to the Concom, to the Board of Health here, planning board is on Thursday. And then, to the ZBA for the special permit, consideration in the beginning of the March 17th.
Have they've been sitting with the plans for a while, is that?
Oh, yes, okay.
Any other comments from anybody in this meeting at home or any of the above? So I'll entertain a motion for however.
And just to clarify what you're asking, if this really just the, I want to ask you to clarify what you're asking.
Yeah, it would be a positive recommendation for the project to go to this.
That just relates to the fact that this is a residential area. Modifying construction.
Yeah, within the permitting process in Barrington, then the process is that whenever someone makes an application for zoning application, just to give their.
But you're asking the CBA for authorization to upgrade this existing structure in a residential area. That, right?
Yeah, they're the special permit granting authority for the alteration of the use.
Yep.
And then you as a reviewing board would just be applying to them to say that you recommend approval of the project. They're going to still need to do the planning board and the CTA, so they need to review the project. So they will continue on that. They just want input from you.
I'll make a motion to send a positive recommendation to the zoning board of appeals for the addition to Fairview Hospital at 2729 Lewis Avenue. Second.
Second, any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Approved, one recused. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excited for the project.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for participating with our whole meeting. Great.
As we move ahead on our journey, citizen street times. Just come right up there.
All right. First, Steve, I really don't give, I appreciate the 3 minutes, but there's individuals in this room, Steve, that never hold the 3 minutes. To hold me to one standard, you're gonna hold everybody to that standard. And I expect that to happen going forward. 3 minutes is 3 minutes to everybody, if that's what you're allowing me. Secondly, I hope to God, now that everybody understands that state procurement laws were violated, something happens here. I don't like to be lied to. There was no reason I stood at a select board meeting, asked an open and honest question, and got lied to. That was in June. I spoke to each of you, Steve and Eric, in August. And you assured me that I'd have an opportunity to see this through. I got 3 minutes today to speak. 3 minutes, $95 right there. That's what it cost me to obtain everything that should have already been said. Open, honest transparency on whatever town project is expected, and it should go forward. There should be no reason one man says, hey, I've got grant money, I'm gonna use it over here, without anybody else knowing that. That's ridiculous. Where is the oversight? There's none. I expect something to happen here. All 5 board members and the town manager need to take action. There's been a clear violation of state procurement laws. $103,000 was spent without a bid process. I have state law in there explaining how it all works. So I'm very familiar with it. I might seem ignorant at times, but I can study just like anybody else. I expect actions to be taken. And if we're going to consider this project a great success, well, we'll see in 3 years. We'll see in 3 years. But I expect every town project going forward, there to be complete, open transparency and full oversight. I can go on and on. My 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
Well, you got more time, Jim. Okay, anyone else? Online? James?
Hi, James, 84 North Plain Road. I was just wondering, any update on Housatonic Waterworks? I know there was an executive session on Friday. Just want to see if there's any updates. Thank you.
No, there isn't. Thank you. Select board time. Bill?
Nothing, thank you.
Ben?
Nothing for me.
Garfield?
Nothing, just the fact that I'm also a member of the housing committee. Affordable housing.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Media time. Okay, by unanimous consent, we are adjourned. Thank you.